ruthless, destructive, bloodthirsty. These words are understatements when it comes to describing the absolute worst of all of the Aesir, Thor. Thor was born to Odin, chief of the Aesir, and Fjorgen, a giant. One can imagine that Thor had a typical godly upbringing similar to his older brother Tyr. Thor himself went on to marry a woman named Sif, and had his sons Magni and Modi with two different female Jotnar. Despite Thor being half-giant himself and having two half-giant children, he shared his father's deep hatred for the Jotnar. This intense loathing towards the giants only grew when Odin was forever banished from Jotunheim after attempting to steal their secrets while on a visit to discuss peace. And so the Holger brothers Brock and Sindri commissioned what would be known as the deadliest and favorite weapon of the Aesir, Mjolnir. Odin then commanded Thor to carry out a lengthy campaign to wipe out every single giant living in Midgard. Thor quickly made a name for himself while wielding this weapon, taking pleasure in murdering any giant he can find. While Thor did indeed share his distaste for the Jotnar with his father, he didn't share his sense of humor. One day, a giant called Hrungnir was wandering Midgard. Hrungnir was no ordinary giant, as he was born without a head or heart. So other Jotnar had to complete his body, and gave Hrungnir a stone head and heart, leading him to grow into a simpleton. While wandering, Hrungnir crossed paths with none other than Odin. But instead of killing the giant instantly, Odin was amused by Hrungnir's gullible nature, and invited him to Asgard to amuse everyone else. After becoming drunk, Hrungnir decided to threaten the Aesir gods, who in turn took it as a joke. As this was occurring, Thor arrived, took one look at the drunken giant, and was not amused. Thor proceeded to strike the giant's head with Mjolnir with such power that chunks of Hrungnir's stone head became embedded in Thor's own skull. While in a state of surprise, Thor was completely unaware of Hrungnir's massive corpse falling, and was crushed, much to the amusement of the surrounding Aesir. Having been too drunk to muster the strength to free himself, Thor was trapped. Only his young sons, Magni and Modi, effortlessly flipped the massive Hrungnir over, freeing their father. While incredibly powerful, Thor is also known as a fool to those who don't favor him. This was displayed sometime after his previous shenanigan with Hrungnir. Somehow a Jotnar king, Thrym, managed to steal Thor's precious hammer Mjolnir as he slept. His reason behind stealing the weapon was simple. He wanted to trade it back to the Aesir in exchange for Freya's hand in marriage. Odin, being the cunning and deceitful god that he was, decided to use this as an opportunity to infiltrate and regain entry to Jotunheim. And so he pressured his wife Freya into going along with this arranged marriage, while also concealing Thor with her magic so that he could join her. Upon presentation of Mjolnir at the wedding party, Thor immediately revealed himself and brutally murdered Thrym, and proceeded to kill every giant that he could find until a guilt-ridden Freya used her magic to cast herself and Thor back to Asgard. This event only helped to establish Thor's reputation as the strongest Norse god, seemingly arguing the case of him possibly being even stronger than Odin. With his genocidal campaign against the giants drawing to an end, Thor's strength was made even more apparent to the Jotnar, and they were terrified. The giant Thamur began construction on a massive wall around Jotunheim to protect his fellow giants from Thor's wrath. In order to finish the wall in time, Thamur tried to enlist the help of his only son, Hrymthur. But instead of helping his father, Hrymthur said that he had the heart of a warrior, not a builder. This led to a heated argument that ended with Thamur striking his son, who promptly ran away from his father. Feeling ashamed of himself, Thamur chased after Hrymthur in order to make things right, but couldn't find him, and became lost in Midgard. Thamur shouting to attempt to locate his son didn't attract the attention that he had hoped for, and instead of Hrymthur answering his calls, it was Thor. A fight between the two ensued, but ended quickly when Thamur fell onto his own chisel that he had been carrying, and stabbed himself through the head, dying instantly. Thamur's body just so happened to also land atop a village that worshipped the Vanir god Njord, crushing it and all of its inhabitants. With his last breath, Thamur released an incredible burst of frost energy that instantly froze everything for miles around. Despite this entire thing being an accident, the greatest stonemason in the world and worshippers of the rival to the Aesir lay dead at Thor's feet. So, as you would expect, Thor took credit for the entire thing, and even claimed that he'd planned it all. Meanwhile, Hremthur ended up completing his father's work in Jotunheim, and then looked towards exacting revenge against the Aesir for their treatment of the giants. Initially wanting to combat Thor, Hremthur decided against it after remembering what had happened to his father. So Hremthur, under the guise of a typical mortal, told the Aesir that the walls of Asgard were half-built and shoddy, and offered to build them the best of walls, and if he didn't complete them within 2 years, they would owe him nothing. But if he did indeed finish before the deadline, he would be owed an audience with Freya. Odin agreed, thinking that this task would be impossible to complete, leaving him with a free wall. To Odin's surprise, Hremthur finished before the deadline and was granted his audience with Freya. Hremthur then whispered something into Freya's ear, and left for the entrance of Asgard. It is speculated that what he had told Freya was that he had embedded a weakness into the walls, in preparation for their downfall at the hands of the fire giant Surt during Ragnarok. Upon reaching the entrance to Asgard, Hremthur found Thor there waiting for him. It was then that he realized he had been played by Odin, knowing who Hremthur was the entire time. Seeing that he was about to meet his end, just like his father before him, Hremthur was content, as he had already played his part. It wasn't until the near future that Thor would finally meet his match. Not even his own experience and strength could prepare Thor for the battle that was to come against the world serpent Jormungandr. Expecting to emerge victorious, the battle between the two ended in a stalemate, forcing Thor to run away from a fight for the first time in his life. Their rivalry wouldn't end till Ragnarok, where they were prophesied to fight until Thor strikes the serpent so hard that the world tree Yggdrasil splinters and sends Jormungandr back in time, with Thor left to walk exactly 9 steps, and ultimately succumb to his foe's poison. Eventually, Thor did complete his mission of exterminating every giant in Midgard, aside from his rival Jormungandr. But soon, Thor would come to learn that the world serpent, or anything else for that matter, was the least of his worries. With another lore video done, there's always another story to be told. Thank you all for watching. If you saw something that you enjoyed or hated, don't be afraid to hit the like or dislike button. Also, be sure to leave any thoughts or suggestions that you may have down in the comments. As always, until next time.